what I've learned is when those uncomfortable emotions present, whether it's from outside circumstances or something you're battling internally, for me personally, when I leaned into that and just leaned into it, it was not comfortable. But if I could tolerate that long enough, eventually what was on the other side of it was so much strength and so much growth, and with time, clarity.
Welcome to the Midlife Reinvention Podcast. I'm your host, Kavita, and the founder of Power Purpose Play, a global community of women in midlife. I'm here to tell you that it's your time now to rediscover what has always been inside of you and bring that out into the world. If you're wondering what's next, but don't know quite what that is, or if you feel a twinge in your heart telling you that you have so much more to do and so much more to offer, you're in the right place. Ask yourself, if not now, when? Do you want to leave your job, start your own business, take control of your health, reignite the passion in your marriage, write that book, or at least that first chapter? Transitions like this can be daunting, but through listening to my story and interviews with incredible women every week, I hope to inspire you to take action. I rediscovered myself after the age of 50, and I know you can too. It's my time now to help you do just that. I'm so excited you're here. Let's dive in. Welcome to another episode of the Midlife Reinvention Podcast. I'm your host, Kavita Ahuja, and the founder of Power Purpose Play, and we are a global platform amplifying the personal growth and inner power of women in midlife. Our goal is really to help you rediscover yourself as you move forward in the next chapter of your life. To that end, I interview incredible women every week who will serve as inspiration for you to take that little twinge in your heart and act upon it. We've had many inspirational women on our podcast, but today's guest, Sheri Lerat, will no doubt leave you feeling emotional and inspired as you hear her story of reinvention. Sheri is the founder of Karys Layne Candles, and as she so beautifully expressed to me, rebirth is a term I would use to convey this next stage of my life as I share my journey from cocoon to butterfly. Sheri founded Karys Layne Candles as a tribute to the beautiful transformation that can be found through the power of healing. Her paintings and candles are as multifaceted and layered as her personal story, which includes grief and loss, numerous preventative surgeries that challenged her form and confidence, codependency, and after her husband lost his battle with PTSD, the realities of being a young RCMP widow and mother. Sheri embodies the spirit of resiliency. She walked away from her professional teaching career to pursue her own company, which now displays her crystal-infused artwork and delicately hand-poured scented wood wick soy candles. Her belief that there truly is healing that takes place in the arts, as well as sharing our stories and finding our tribe. It is a reminder that we are not alone. So, Sheri, thank you. I love that last bit about finding our tribe, and that's really why I've asked you to be here today to share your story, which is really an incredible one. And it's a story of tragedy and loss, but also powerful healing. So you actually wrote to me that as difficult as my journey has been, I'm shocked at how much I can truly handle, and it has left me completely fearless. And that we need to really talk about these stories so that people don't feel alone. Many of us walk a different version of the same path. So that's exactly what I do every week is I introduce our audience to different people who have amazing stories. And I know your journey is difficult, but I appreciate you being here. And maybe we can just get into it and learn from you and maybe talk a little bit about your experience. I know that you had cancer. So just tell us a little bit about that part and welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you so much, Kavita. I'm super excited to be here. Yeah, so I have a bit of a family history with cancer. I myself didn't have cancer, but I was touched by cancer personally. So I'll get into that. Cancer first touched our family when I was about 14 years old. My mom was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and it came as a surprise. She was young. She was in her mid-30s. She was healthy. And I remember Mom and Dad sitting us down, and I mean, she was late stage 3, so she didn't have a very good prognosis, and she had to undergo some surgeries and extensive treatment. And she was given, I believe it was 5 years at best, but the doctors had actually told us to prepare for anything at that point. So that news hit pretty hard. I was 14, she was in her mid 30s, and I started being terrified to lose my mom.
Of course. Yes.
Yeah. She was one of my best friends, and she was so happy and bubbly and almost childlike. You couldn't help but just love her. But she was a very strong woman, and she had it in her head that she was going to beat this and she was going to come out the other side. So that was my first experience with cancer. And around the same time that she got diagnosed, her father also got diagnosed. So all of a sudden we had a lot of cancer in the family, and my grandfather actually stayed with us because we were in the city and he was undergoing his own treatments. My mom ended up going into remission, and she ended up beating the odds, and she actually survived 12 years.
Wow. Amazing. Yeah,
she did. Yeah.
That's amazing.
So yeah, she had a lot of fight in her.
Yeah.
But she did pass away. So it was actually shortly after our wedding when her cancer came back. And at that point it had spread, and yeah, she ended up losing her battle. Mm-hmm. And then a few years later, her sister was diagnosed with breast cancer. And this hit me really hard because I was incredibly close with her. And she underwent her treatments and whatnot. And I remember the day that she called me, and she told me that she found out that she carried the BRCA1 gene.
Right.
And probably explained why there was so much cancer in my family. Mm. And BRCA1 is tied to ovarian and breast cancer. So it explained my mom's cancer, but at that point my mom had passed already. So my aunt thought it would be a good idea for me to get tested.
Right.
If I was ready. I mean, it was a big decision to make, because with that decision came other decisions.
Of course.
And I knew that if I decided to get tested, I would be fully prepared to have the surgeries I needed preventatively, because I had a very, very high chance of getting cancer. I was constantly being screened by my mom's doctors, just things like that. So cancer was always on my mind because her doctors thought I might have a higher risk because I was her daughter. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So yeah, it was a lot of discussions with my husband, and we decided to take a day off work and get the test done. And it turned out I was positive. And that was a very difficult day, because I knew that day that I was now going to be on a journey of multiple surgeries. And it didn't take long for the surgeries to start, which was probably a good thing, because I didn't want a lot of time to think about it or mull it over.
Right.
I had already made up my mind before I had gotten the testing. But yeah, they were very difficult surgeries to have. It was a very trying time. I didn't have the stamp of breast cancer survivor or ovarian cancer survivor. I was healthy. I was in my prime. Mm-hmm. And to make that decision to cut out healthy tissue was difficult. And there were a lot of steps that came with that.
Right.
I had to remove my reproductive organs, so that involved hormone replacement therapy. So I was nervous about trying that. And then when I removed my breast tissue, I wanted to keep as much as I could, because that was important to me, to keep as much of my own body as I could.
Yes. And
yeah, I ended up having quite the relationship with my medical team. I ended up having 8 surgeries in total.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was in the middle of them when my husband, and I know we'll get to that later, but I was in the middle of my surgeries actually when my husband lost his battle with PTSD. So I had his support for the first part of that journey. And then the second part of that journey, I've kind of had to find my own fire and do it on my own.
Right.
But I'm happy to say my last surgery was 2 years ago, and I'm healthy and in the clear, and I'm finally comfortable talking about it. It took me a long time to be comfortable talking about it.
Wow. Sheri, thank you for sharing that. I know it's so difficult, but firstly, you had just so much bravery that you showed there. You said that your mom and your aunt were very brave, but I see that you got that gene as well. So just to be able to accept that, well, first to get the test and then decide that based on the results, you were going to go ahead with the surgeries. And that takes tremendous courage, I can't imagine. And then I'm so glad that you're doing well now. And although having 8 surgeries must have been very trying, along with all the other things that you were going through. But I think it's what you just described is such a great lesson, or just such a great motivation for women who may have similar diagnoses to think about preventative surgery. So thank you for sharing that.
Yes, of course. It's interesting you mentioned that, because I actually remember sitting in a waiting room a few years prior and flipping through a magazine and reading the story of Angelina Jolie. She had the same.
Yes, I was going to ask you if that's the same gene she had.
Well,
yeah.
And the reason that article grabbed my attention wasn't necessarily because of the surgeries. It was because her mom had ovarian cancer. And so, because I could relate to that. And so I remember reading that article and being absolutely floored that she had gone through with those surgeries. And I thought she still had so much grace and so much beauty with her. And I never thought anything of it, but it was interesting when my aunt had called me up a few years later, and it all kind of made sense. Like, that was why I read that.
Yeah. It's interesting how the universe works, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I was supposed to read it that day.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So I guess if dealing with cancer wasn't enough, Sheri, you also experienced as you mentioned, your husband's PTSD and eventual suicide because of it. And I just tell us about this and how this painful experience transformed you, as I'm sure it did. And I know that this is very difficult, so you just share as much or as little as you want. But as you mentioned before, by sharing your story, it can help others heal as well. So please go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll just start a little bit. I'll back up a little bit to when I met my husband. So I was 21 years old. We were in college, and we met through a mutual friend, a club one night. And the minute we met each other, we were absolutely inseparable. He felt like home. I don't know how else to describe it. He was everything my dad taught me to look for in a man. He was chivalrous. He was polite. He was thoughtful. And it was shortly after we met that he got accepted into the RCMP training program.
RCMP, for those who are not in Canada, is the Royal Canadian Mounted Police.
Right, the National Police Force here. Yeah.
Yes.
And so he started his training, and that was really when we started our life. We moved to a northern posting, and, within a few years, we had our daughter, we had a big wedding with a beautiful honor guard. And we had moved to the city at that point. We got transferred to the city and had our son. I was a stay-at-home mom, which was at the time important to both of us because we both grew up with stay-at-home moms, and I was able to stay home. So, looking back, those were just such amazing, easy years in a sense. It was during that time where my mom had passed away. So it was shortly after our wedding. But my life with Mike at that time was absolutely amazing. And then we got transferred again. And it was after we had moved, I just started to notice a change in him. But this was also around the time that I had gotten the testing done. So we were both kind of going through our own thing. Some of the changes in him, he was a bit more withdrawn. He was more closed off. He wasn't as engaged with me, with the kids. I was taking it personally because I thought my body was changing. And I know that we had made this decision together, but I was thinking maybe he regretted it or maybe he felt different about me. So it's interesting looking back how we internalize so much.
Yes.
When really, I didn't know this at the time, but it had nothing to do with me. And he was going through his own battle that I don't even think he understood what was happening. He just knew he felt off. And things just kind of started to unravel. The more he was disconnected, the more I would demand of him. And the more we would argue and the more we would fight and not even really understand what was happening. I thought we were just maybe having typical marriage problems. And he started to become more honest with me and started to realize that there was maybe something more going on that he might need help with.
Right.
And we were actually on a family vacation with family friends it was typical of us to go on vacation with these friends. And it was during this vacation that they really noticed the change in him. And we were fortunate enough that night that he sat down with his friends and he opened up and he was candid. And that was when it came out that he was battling with alcohol and that something just wasn't quite right. And after that holiday, he agreed to go away and get some treatment and just dive a little bit deeper into what was going on. And at this time, he was diagnosed with PTSD. And so it was kind of that learning curve of learning what was about.
Sorry to interrupt, but was there PTSD usually is like a traumatic thing that happens? Was there something that triggered that, or was it just an accumulation of things?
It's common among first responders. They have a very stressful job.
Yes.
I'm sure that they get lots of triggers throughout their careers. So I can't speak for him, but yeah, when he got the diagnosis, I think it was a little bit of relief because at least there was a label and something now to maybe work towards or something to battle in a sense. And he kind of knew what you were battling at that point. Right. So yeah, he went away and got treatment, and when he came back, he was amazing. We were back on track. We were back to hitting the gym. We were back to socializing with friends again. We were in a really, really good place. And I remember when he said to me, he said, you might have some issues too that you need to work on, because when he was gone away for treatment, so there's addiction, but then there's also the other side of it is codependency that a spouse typically falls into. And I remember when he said that to me, I was like, what? I don't have the problem. But yeah, the more I looked into it, I did agree to go. And so I went away for a week and learned all about my codependent behavior. And that was an absolute transformative week for me because I learned more about what he was going through, and it helped me understand what I was going through. And it helped, it really strengthened our family in a sense. So when I came home from that, we were comfortable talking to the kids about what was going on in our home, and we were able to explain it to them at a level that they understood, because they were just as confused as we were about what was happening in our home.
Of course.
When I came home from that, we were in a really good place, and that was for quite some time. And then I noticed he started to slip again, and it really scared me because I had a better understanding now of what this was.
Right.
And it was the most helpless feeling watching him become a man that he didn't want to be. And yeah, he eventually lost his battle with PTSD. And I was 37.
Right.
It was a few days after our daughter's birthday. I had just launched my candle company.
Right.
I kind of thought maybe I knew he was struggling, but I thought, of course, your mind doesn't go there. You think that he'll be able to find his way back, but he didn't.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to hear this story. And I can't imagine. And firstly, thank you for sharing, because I know that even though you've probably talked about it a lot, I don't think it gets any easier, I'm sure. And you're so strong, and many people would have given up after the pain and loss that you suffered. I'd like to move on to how you persevered, and you actually built this beautiful company called Karys Layne Candles, despite not only the loss of your husband, but your own battle with cancer. And so, kudos to you. That's amazing. You actually said that your business is a tribute to the beautiful transformation that can come through the power of healing. And so tell us, I know you just said that you started the business a little while before you lost your husband, but tell us about the business and why you started it and what does the name mean and what do you hope to really convey with your beautiful work, which I see behind you is a beautiful painting of yours. And if you're on, you can see the video, you'll see how beautiful it is, as long as also as how beautiful Sheri is herself. So, yeah, so tell us a little bit about the company.
Hi, my friend. Kavita here. Do you often feel blocked from moving forward? We all feel that way at times. These are referred to as energy blocks. I've created a short, actionable PDF guide to help you release your negative energy blocks. Click the link in the description to download it now for free. Now, let's get back to the episode.
Yeah, the company kind of started by accident, to be honest. So while we were in the middle of our storms, I started painting in the basement. And I started painting because it allowed me to be home, but not really be present. My marriage was suffering, things were difficult, and it was really hard to be around some of the things going on in the house. So I would just disappear into the basement and I would paint. And I had no agenda. I didn't know what I was painting. I would just start literally throwing paint. And it became an emotional release for me. And I just kind of stacked them up as I was painting. They would dry and I would just stack them up against the wall with no plan for them. It was just a release for me. And then candles started very similarly. I was lighting candles constantly. I found them very calming and very grounding. And I'm a creative person and I'm a teacher by trade. So I like to figure things out for myself. And so I started looking into making candles because I was burning through them so quickly. Mm-hmm. And that became a hobby I actually really started to enjoy. And there's a lot of thought that goes into making candles. So different recipes and temperatures and percentages and things like that. And so it kept my mind busy. Mm-hmm. So I enjoyed that mental distraction in the evenings after work. And then when the emotional issues got too much, I would go downstairs and paint. So these were actually just hobbies that I developed as a way to cope with some of the issues going on. I mean, both with my surgeries and the changes in my husband, because it was all happening at once and it was all incredibly difficult. So after I kind of figured out how to make these candles, and my husband, by the way, he was the biggest supporter of them. He loved testing days because you have to wait a few days before you can test. And mm-hmm. So I had his support all the way through with this, but I ended up feeling like maybe I could sell them. And so I created a brand, and the name is actually a namesake to my kid's grandma. So my mom passed of cancer, but Mike's mom did as well. So my kids never grew up knowing their grandmothers. Right. So the name is named after both of them.
How nice.
Yeah. And it was interesting. It just started with candles, and it didn't cross my mind to sell the paintings until I started hanging them in the house because I had wall space and I didn't really know what to do with them. I didn't really love them because I knew the state I was in when I made them, but nonetheless, I would hang them, and people would come over and be drawn to this art, and they would love it. And it just floored me because I kept thinking, oh my gosh, if you knew the state of mind I was in when I made that. And people would ask if it was for sale or if I would sell it. And I was like, oh no, I don't think you want that. So they hung in the house, but eventually I did actually want to move them out. I didn't want the energy in the house anymore. And I called up some girlfriends who I knew loved them, and a couple of them took them off my hands for me. And it's so interesting now because now they hang in their living rooms, and to them, it's just a beautiful piece of art. So interesting to me, that transformation of energy. Yes. Because that was healing and cleansing and transformative. And I mean, I left a lot of my emotion in that art. So for somebody else to find beauty in that was actually very humbling for me. That was when I decided to also sell my art as well as the candles on my website. So
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
There's so much that you said there, and in terms of kind of the emotional release that the art allowed you, and releasing that emotional release from within, and channeling, I guess, your grief into beautiful art. And the other thing that you mentioned, which I really love to hear, is that I guess you didn't even realize the talent that you possessed. And I think that's a lot what happens is women, especially women, sometimes don't realize all the talents they have within, and it may take something to get it out of them. But it's so beautiful about the transformation of energy that you also said, is that what may not seem like a talent to us, other people see the beauty. And I believe a lot in the power of energy and the universe, and obviously the energy that you have with your art and your candles is something that people see as positive. So just beautiful. I think there's so many lessons to learn from that. So many lessons. Yes.
I paint for different reasons now. I don't have to hide in the basement anymore. And I think I released a lot of that. So that's been nice. And it's been interesting to even see how my paintings have shifted. They're not so stormy.
Yes.
And now I put crystals in them too.
Yes, I see that. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's been a nice addition to them.
Gorgeous. Gorgeous. So Sheri, we talk a lot here about courage and taking the first step or the next step after different people experience different hardships in their life. But obviously you had to have a lot of courage and to deal with the obstacles. And one of the things that I really like to impart is knowledge and lessons, or what would you say to women to help them find the courage to move on?
I think the biggest lesson I've learned through all of this is to truly embrace the pain and the pressure when it comes, which most people, including myself, struggle with that. It doesn't feel good. And you typically want to run or distract or something. But what I've learned is when those uncomfortable emotions present, whether it's from outside circumstances or something you're battling internally, for me personally, when I leaned into that and just leaned into it, was not comfortable. But if I could tolerate that long enough, eventually what was on the other side of it was so much strength and so much growth, and with time, clarity. And that has probably been my biggest takeaway. And that's why I often reference the butterfly and the cocoon. And I think you just have to look at nature. I think diamonds are formed under pressure, and the butterfly comes out of the cocoon, and a seed needs dark and it doesn't come up until it's ready. So I think there's something to be said for leaning into that a little bit when you feel compelled to, and also to do something with that emotion, whatever that is, whether it's creative, whether it's, I know my daughter, for example, turned to music for a while. And I think it's just doing something with that emotion, working out even for me. So although I'm creative and I tap into that, but I also do other things as well, and taking time for myself and working out, just moving that energy around and giving it a healthy outlet, whatever that is for you. I mean, sometimes it takes a bit of trial and error, but I think giving yourself that permission and that patience, figure that out, I think has been a big lesson I've learned. The other one that I think is so important is how people just need people. I think it's really so simple.
Yes.
Seeing all the sides of mental health and experiencing all of it in our home. Both my husband lost his battle to it, and I came out the other side of it. It's a really surreal to me, but through all of it, we had our people, and people that we could turn to that didn't judge. And it took a long time to want to open up to people, but when you can find your tribe, that's absolutely invaluable.
Yes.
like-minded people that understand you and can offer you compassion. And they might not have the answers, but just holding space for you.
Holding space, yes. Mm-hmm. I loved what you said. I never really thought about the nature, going back to what you said about the nature part of it, and that the seed that needs darkness to grow, and then the butterfly in the cocoon. And so true. And all these things are around us. And if we just open our eyes to them, then we can actually learn lessons from nature. And you're really embracing the pain and the pressure that you feel and leaning into it. And then again, the piece about having a tribe. And I know that you have channeled that energy into a community of people that you have been associated with. And you were part of the Wounded Warriors Canada Surviving Spouse Program. And I'm all about community, obviously. And tell us about the power of this community and how it helped you and how it helps others deal with trauma and loss. And I also understand that you created a candle specifically for them. So tell me all about that community and what it means for you.
The Wounded Warriors have been absolutely invaluable. So they offer mental health supports to veterans, first responders, and their families. And so when I was asked to if I would partake in it was the very first surviving spouse program that they were doing. Mm-hmm. I mean, of course, I understood the power of group therapy because I had gone away for my codependency. So I was absolutely honored that they would ask me. And so it was a week-long program, and it was interesting. I thought I didn't have a lot. I thought I had processed a lot of my emotions and whatnot, but that week brought up a whole new level of baggage that I didn't even know I was carrying. And I can happily say I left so much of that in Ontario that week. The power of being around like-minded people, being around other women who have their spouses, their widows of first responders, and learning the difference, or learning that we had traumatic grief. And that's a different kind of grief that needs to be processed. And being around women who were processing their own grief while also their children's, because there's a whole other level and layer there.
Of course.
Suffering. And it's that dance of being okay yourself and then being strong enough to also support them. That program was absolutely invaluable. And when you share space like that, like we did, it's lifelong bonds. And the connections that we've made there, if anyone's having a bad day, we're just a text away, and there's no judgment. It's just that safe space. And in terms of the candle that was created, that just kind of happened one evening. We were having we kind of made ourselves a spa night, and
nice.
Laughed so much that night. It was, honestly, looking back, such a magical night. And of course I had my candles burning because I bring them everywhere. They're like a security blanket for me now. I had this idea to create a candle to commemorate this experience, and they thought it was a great idea, and I didn't want to do it on my own. So I asked them for their help, and we all brainstormed everything about it. I came home from that program and I ran with that a bit, and I took it to my designer, and I've created a candle called Cœur de la Rose, and it means heart of the rose. And it celebrates that safe space that the Wounded Warriors were able to give us and allow us to be completely raw and vulnerable, because such tremendous healing came out the other side of that. And so that candle commemorates that experience, and I was honored to make it, and I am very proud of it.
Well, as you should be. Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. I think the fact that you shared your experience with other women who were had similar experiences is so important. And I think that's such an important message to send to people, is that you're not alone, and that you need to find your tribe, and you need to find people who can relate to you without judgment, and just hold your hand and hold your heart and have spa nights or whatever it is, right? Because if we try and go through these things in life alone, then that makes it all the more difficult. So I would say that is a really important thing to seek your tribe, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow. So You touched a little bit on how you're doing now. You seem like obviously you're with your business. Hopefully it's doing great. And how are you doing now? How are your kids doing? And what is next for you? I know that you did say that there's one quote that I really loved, and it says, you say that Karys Layne Candles is a testament to find your fire. And that's great. So what is your fire now, Sheri?
Oh, my fire now. I think, honestly, my fire now is to live fearlessly. There's not a lot that scares me anymore. Truly, there isn't. I have suffered so many losses, and raising these kids on my own. And I mean, I've raised my daughter to adulthood now. It blows my mind. I had no idea I was capable of that.
Yes.
For me, moving forward, it's just being fearless. It's about fresh starts. It's about moving forward. It's about trying new things. It's about not being afraid to fail and failing forward, staying humble, being kind, just all those things. I'm happy to speak my truth if it helps other people. That's important to me because I've lived that double life where you don't want to speak about what's going on behind closed doors. And just that relief of even me reading that article of knowing someone else has walked those shoes, it might seem insignificant at the time, but I've learned that you really have no idea the impact it can have on other people. Mm-hmm. So moving forward, I've got my company. I'm still making candles. I'm selling things. I'm going to be in the Vancouver Art Show in May of 2022. So I'm excited about that.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I just signed on with Wounded Warriors Canada. So I'm now an official ambassador, which was such
Of course you are. Of course you are. I had no doubt about that. Of course you are.
Thank you. I've been a part of a project now for a couple of years where it's still in the production phases, but it's a documentary type film with storytellers based on resiliency. So that's been an exciting project. And the parent of that is the True to Soul online network. And I'm actually part of the advisory council with that. And that's actually launching here within the next few weeks. So I have a lot of things on the go, positive things. I'm in a good place. I'm excited to see what life has in store. And yeah.
That's amazing. I can see your face lights up and your energy is just shining through. And I'm so glad to hear that. And my goodness, you're doing so many things. And this documentary is coming out soon, you said, or it's
still in the production phase of it.
Okay.
But yeah, it'll be, I'm not sure how soon, but
yes.
Working on
being
it.
An ambassador. I think that what you said about living fearlessly is so true. And I don't think it's about realizing what you've gone through, but also learning from it and being courageous. And this is such a strong message that I really want to impart is for women, especially. Don't be afraid. Try and speak your truth, as you said, and live fearlessly. And you've got one life, so do what's in your heart. And it can be difficult, but again, find your tribe to help you go through these things. So just wonderful. So if there was maybe one main message, I know that you've imparted so many wonderful messages, but maybe one message out of your own experiences that you could just kind of leave us with.
I think trust your own instincts. I think a lot of times we are smarter than we give ourselves credit for. And sometimes we just need to be still long enough and quiet long enough, and the answers come and the strength comes. I used to run around asking everybody else the answers, and I've learned that there's a time to ask people questions, but there's also a time to turn inward. Mm-hmm. And I think we know more about what's best for us than we give ourselves credit for.
It's our inner voice, right? Mm-hmm. Tapping into that. And that's so important. It's uncanny you said that, because I'm trying to do that more and more. It's so important because all the answers really lie within, I believe.
And it can be hard to hear it because you have to be quiet and still.
Yes. It's
that.
It's a process to tap into that for sure. And I agree with you, like being quiet and not, because there's always noise. There's noise around us everywhere. There's noise, and mostly it's in our head. But if we sit through all that noise and really understand what it is that we really want, What is it our soul telling us that we really want? And listen to that voice inside. And that's a lovely, lovely sentiment. So thank you for that. So, wow. Okay. It's a lot. And thank you for sharing. And I'd love to, we're going to have in our show notes all your links and where can people find your beautiful artwork and your candles, and tell us a little bit about where we can find you.
Well, I'm in a few local stores here, but I do most of my sales online. So I have my online.
Sorry, where are you located, Sheri?
Oh, sorry, I'm in Regina.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But I ship both my candles and art worldwide.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah. My online store, which you'll provide the link for, has all the chin. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would encourage everyone. I've met you and you're just such a lovely person. You have so much to offer, and good luck with all your endeavors. And please, everybody who's listening, check out her art. She's amazing. It's just such an emotional and beautiful work you do. So thank you so much for sharing your story and for imparting all these wonderful lessons to our audience.
Well, thank you for having me.
Take care.
I so appreciated my interview with Sheri, as I'm sure you did as well. Her story of the grief and losses she faced in her life, yet her incredible resiliency and transformation through the power of healing, is something we can all learn from. As she has so beautifully expressed, rebirth is a term I would use to convey this next stage of my life as I share my journey from cocoon to butterfly. Here are her key takeaways. Number 1, sometimes we internalize so much and blame ourselves when sometimes it actually has nothing to do with us. 2, when uncomfortable emotions present, when you lean into it and tolerate it, eventually what is on the other side is strength and growth, and with time, clarity. 3, you just have to look at nature. Diamonds are formed under pressure, and the butterfly comes out of the cocoon, and a seed needs dark, and it doesn't come out until it's ready. 4, do something with that emotion, whatever that is, whether that's something creative, exercise, or just taking time for yourself. Move the energy around and give it a healthy outlet. 5, give yourself permission and patience. 6, people just need people. It's so simple. People that don't judge. Find your tribe that holds space for you with no judgment. The power of being around like-minded people is powerful. When you share space like that, it's lifelong bonds. 7, it's about fresh starts, moving forward, trying new things, not being afraid to fail, failing forward, staying humble, being kind. 8, share your story. You have no idea the impact you can have on other people. 9, speak with truth, live fearlessly, and find your tribe. And 10, trust your own instincts. A lot of times we're smarter than we give ourselves credit for. Sometimes we just need to be still and quiet long enough, and the answers come and the strength comes. We know more about what's best for us than we give ourselves credit for. Thank you so much for being here. You could be in many places, so we really appreciate you taking time for yourself, for your own personal growth. If you enjoy what we stand for at Power Purpose Play, you will love our newest offering. I reinvented myself after 50, and I'm giving you the exact framework and process I used to get where I am today. This is in a course called It's My Time Now, How to Rediscover Yourself in Midlife. It's about finding yourself again, and I'm your guide on this incredible journey. All the details are in the links below, and I'm so excited to tell you that the doors to this opportunity are now open. Will you take the time for yourself? Our independent learning course is open on November 15th, and we are taking registrations now. I'm so excited to share also that from now until November 15th, we're offering a special price of $100 off. For only $197, you can access this life-changing course online. Register now to receive this limited special offer. Our group coaching will begin in the new year, but you can also have me as your personal coach, guiding you through the process of rediscovering in private one-on-one sessions. As Sheri so eloquently said, give yourself permission and patience. If you're wondering what's next in your life, I know I can help you figure that out. Till next week, my friend, in love and light.